Hello everybody, this is Craig from the Pacific War Channel, and I'm joined here yet again by my friend Ian. How are you?
Hello everyone, doing very well.
And if you are visually seeing us, most likely this is probably on the Patreon account, but if I do decide to put this on YouTube, for those who haven't already joined, please check out www.patreon.com/Pacific War Channel, where I have exclusive podcasts. Probably not this one. I think this one will go to the general public, so maybe you're listening on Spotify or something. But if you were visually seeing this, we're in front of an AI kind of made up Japanese bar.
I thought it was real.
Yeah, it's not a real...
I know I say that every time.
I'm too proud of myself for making
grab this one down? Almost.
And the subject matter of this podcast is going to be fun, because I know Ian doesn't know about who we're going to be speaking about today.
Yeah, you just asked me, do you know anything about this guy? I was like, nope.
So, brief history for people who don't know about this guy, because he became famous a few years ago. Have you ever heard of Count Dunkula?
Count Chocula?
Dunkula.
Okay, no, that's just like...
Count Chocula!
I'm sorry, that's like all I heard. You know, I'm deaf in one ear. It's like... no.
Well, a famous kind of YouTuber from Britain, right-wing guy, he just came across a meme. So, arguably, I mean, there's a lot of historic memes, you know, in history, obviously.
Yeah.
But this character we're going to be talking about, he is literally known as the basest warlord, or general for that matter, to ever existed.
Okay.
His lifestyle, I kid you not, imagine Andrew Tate as a warlord.
I'd rather not. Just like, that can't end well.
It didn't for the people under him. So, for people who don't know, he's infamously known by one of his many nicknames, he has a ton of them, as the Dogmeat General, but his Chinese name was Zhang Zongchang, and he was one of the many warlords during China's Warlord period, so that's 1918 to 1928.
I've heard the term Dogmeat General thrown out before, but I've never, I don't know anything about it. I forget where I heard it.
Hey everyone, I just wanted to let you know I now have a Patreon account found at www.patreon.com/thepacificwarchannel. Over there you can find exclusive Patreon episodes and podcasts based on suggestions from patrons, and other benefits like early access to all of my content, live hangouts, your name in the end credits, and much, much more. So please go check it out. It's recent, like I said, he's recently become kind of like a cultural icon because Hearts of Iron 4, you know, they have this thing where you're playing for like Reign of China and you can play as all the warlords. And when everyone found out about this quacky character, and he is quacky, they're like, who is this guy? And he's really, it's emboldened this image of him. And like, if you go on the Wikipedia page, it'll say everything that you need to know about him, because he's famous for many things, one of which is his famous poetry, which we will read some of his poetry. He was semi-literate. And the many quirks of his character, he loved drinking, he loved women, he loved cigars.
Is this like a Rasputin type character? Is it like, from your description, like that's what I'm leaning towards that. Like that's what I'm envisioning now.
I would, if I had to describe him,
Andrew Tate Rasputin.
He was a giant mafia thug. So imagine in the mafia, you have the smart guys, you got, you know, the guys good with money, this and that. You know the henchmen who are like the killers, who are like not the smartest one?
They're goons, they're enforcers,
Sometimes the goons accidentally get on top, and they're just brutes. That's kind of this guy.
Okay.
And I'm going to do like the whole story, because I did write a very short script once for an episode on one of Kings and Generals podcasts where I was just talking about warlords. So I couldn't really talk about him in depth. And there is an episode on my YouTube where it's 15 minutes condensed about the history of him as a monster, because as I'm going to make jokes, and he is a funny character, he was a tyrant and a monster, like a horrible person, but we're going to get into it. And since you don't know anything about this guy, I'm going to tell you his story. You're just going to pitch in when you want to, because it is going to be pretty funny. I'll say that much. So we're starting this off. It's the 1880s in China, all right? Zhang Zongchang, he's born in 1881 in Yi County. Present-day Laizhou. This is in Shandong province. If you don't know your geography of China, Shandong is northern. It's very close to Beijing. It touches the water, but it's notoriously known as the place in China where problems happen. So all the troublesome people seem to just come from Shandong, and it just generates thugs and criminals. It's just notoriously known as the problematic province.
It's like Birmingham in England.
It's a great one. Yeah. That's exactly like that.
Early 1900s, like gangs were popping up everywhere around there. I'm gonna reference Peaky Blinders for
there you go.
Great show
with Cillian Murphy.
Yeah. Oh, great Britishman.
Making a joke, by the way. Yeah. No, it's Cillian. It's an Adam Friedland joke there.
Well, also like the joke of like too many people keep calling him British, and he's like, no, I'm Irish. Like one time he was shaking hands with Prince Harry, I think, and Prince Harry was like, "Oh, it's so great to have a great British actor like you," and Cillian Murphy was just like, "I'm Irish." God. This was a couple years ago too.
Oh, that's rough. So, anyways, our little boy, we'll call him Zhang, so I don't have to keep saying his full name. He grows up in an impoverished village. His father is a trumpeter and a head shaver. So he's, this is Qing Dynasty. They actually had to shave their heads and have a coup in the back. So there was always a head shaver in the villages. And he was a rampant alcoholic, his dad. His mom was, she exorcised evil spirits. So she was I'm not making a joke of this, she was a witch. So his mom was a witch.
It's a good career path.
And she ends up leaving the family because she finds a younger guy. So poor old Zhang and his dad.
What a witch.
Exactly.
I mean, in this case, like, how many divorced like husbands have like called their ex-wives witches and that?
And she actually was a witch. And so him and his dad, they moved to Manchuria. So this is northeastern China. Okay. It's almost historically not even considered China proper. It's the homelands of the Jurchen people. It's almost they're not Mongols, but they're more Mongol-like. I'll say that. The Manchu people. So Zhang, he's a teenager, and Manchuria is a pretty rough place, and he immediately starts doing petty crimes in a major city called Harbin in Manchuria. He becomes a pickpocket. He's a bouncer at like bars and different places. He's a prospector and a regular bandit. So he's just juggling all sorts of jobs just to get by. He's a teenager. Now Manchuria is bordering Siberia. He ends up crossing the border to find some work. So he becomes a laborer, and he's working amongst Russians. And he actually picks up the Russian language in the process. And this is going to be something that's
actually could come in handy.
Very handy. Yeah. It's actually going to be one of the main reasons why he's going to be successful. His career options are going to get better because he speaks Russian. Yeah. So something starts to happen. He goes into being a bandit again, and he becomes like a specialized bandit. So in China they call them the Honghuzi. So they're bandits. They're everywhere around China, but they're notoriously in Shandong and Manchuria. These are like the roaming guys who rob. Like in the Wild West, the guys who rob the trains.
They would call them like highwaymen.
Highwaymen. He's a highwayman. So he's part of a group where they literally go around from village to village just stealing stuff when it's like harvest time and just they're regular
bandits. Yeah, you're making it sound like it is the Wild West, but I mean
it is the Wild West.
That's essentially what was happening. You would have these highwaymen robbing them on the local roads and that. When they're doing their cattle drive, they would come in and steal cattle, round up some of their cattle, run away with it. It's like
So you actually, just to make it easier, so
they're bandits.
This enormous place that holds 3 provinces is called Manchuria. It's stuck between Russia, China proper, and Japan. Yeah. So it's unstable as shit. These three groups are always fighting over it, even though it technically is part of China. The other 2 are always involved. Even Korea to a lesser extent.
But it lacks the solidarity of like China proper, and thus it making it easier for Japan later on to swoop in and.
The Qing. So this is still under the Qing Dynasty at this point. The Qing Dynasty is ruled by the Manchu. Manchuria is their homelands, so they as a people are even treated like outsiders, and it's not a liked place by the rest of the Han Chinese. So that's the majority of China's. They call them. They're a group called the Han Chinese. Today, they make up, I think, 80% of the population. I don't know the numbers, but yeah. Manchu weren't loved. And the Russo-Japanese War breaks out in 1904. So this is a huge opportunity for bandits. So a lot of like famous warlords will join the Japanese at this point because they want to fight alongside an Asian rather than a white. But what's weird about Zhang Zongchang, he joins the Russians. He speaks Russian, so he becomes like a mercenary, and him and his bandit kind of hooligans, they become like what you would call like a made up unit, and he's basically robbing the Japanese. He's doing whatever to hurt the Japanese, but you know, in the end, the Russians lose the war. Well, technically lose the war. It doesn't hurt him at all. He apparently was a very brave guy, and he got a good taste for war. So he had been just doing banditry stuff before, but this was an actual war. So he got good with guns. He made a lot of friends.
I was going to say, like, this sounds like a networking opportunity.
Yeah, and he is a big networker. He definitely is, and he was networking doing this. After the war, he just goes right back to the Hunghudza lifestyle. So he's a bandit guy again, but now he's the leader of a bandit gang. So we're talking probably about 50 guys under him, if he has a good size one. No idea how big his gang was, but it was enough to get him some notoriety. In 1911, China goes through the Xinhai Revolution. This is when the Qing dynasty actually collapses, and they're trying to force like democracy, a republic, onto China. And Zhang, he throws himself. He basically he's in control of his bandit gang. He throws his lot in with the revolutionaries because everybody was doing that. And he's a bit of a desperado. He goes to Jiangsu province, and that's where he joins the Green Standard Army. That's one of 3 armies that the Qing dynasty had operating. They're more of a police force than a real army. It's kind of a joke. But he wanted to get an actual military ranking just to boost his name.
Yeah, get the prestige.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he has a commanding officer named Cheng Dushan, and apparently Zhang was a pretty good officer because the guy said, "Hey, you're going to be the successor if I get taken out." In my notes it says that. I would wager Zhang probably threatened to kill the guy, and that's why he said he'd be a successor, because Zhang was a criminal guy. So
yeah, you know, he's an Andrew Tate. I'm sorry, I keep going back to like
when we get more into this, he's gonna sound like Andrew Tate.
In my mind right now, I am picturing Andrew Tate doing all this, and
if I showed you a picture, there's a picture with him with glasses on in front of a pile of money with a cigar in his mouth. I'm sorry, he really does give off the Andrew Tate vibe. It's pretty funny.
I'll probably bring it up again.
So, Zhang, when he becomes a Green Standard, he's actually he's in a cavalry detachment, and he has a division commander named Long Yuqin, and they're actually battling bandits, ironically, because who do you hire to fight bandits? You find a previous bandit.
Yeah.
That's actually a thing that reoccurs in Chinese history for 3,000 years.
Who knows them better than themselves?
The second revolution is 2 years later, so 1913. Zhang, he becomes the divisional commander because the other guy, Lan Yuqin, he dies, and who knows what happened there. But there's a little bit of an issue with his division. A revolutionary leader that's overlooking his group, who's a famous warlord later on in history named General Feng Guozhan. He doesn't like him that much. He sees him as kind of problematic, probably because the guy's a criminal. So he knocks down the unit citation, and he kind of makes him like symbolic, and that sucks. Okay. So Zhang, he responds by murdering another revolutionary leader named Chen Chumei. This is in Shanghai in 1916, and it seems likely that it was Feng Guozhan who said, "You're going to do this job for me, and then I'll make things good for you again." So this is where you're seeing like Zhang is basically a hired hitman. Like he did a hit. Feng Guozhan later, he becomes vice president of the New Republic, and he appoints Zhang as a commander of his personal guard. So obviously, just like a mafia, Zhang is going up, you know.
Now it's in the inner circle.
Mm-hmm. Really, and it's a quick inner circle because you're talking about a guy who was a revolutionary. He ends up being the vice president, and then he gives you a personal guard detail. That's a pretty big up. Now, in 1918, this is when we say the Chinese Warlord Era begins. Everything goes to shit. The country is technically completely fractured. All the main generals in the military, they form these things, we call them cliques, and they all are fighting to have the strongest army, because whoever has the strongest army secretly controls the country.
Yeah.
And there's many of them, but Zhang, what he notices at this point is you got to choose which of the big bosses are you going to like put your lot in with. And someone who actually fought in the Russo-Japanese War for the Japanese side, his name was Zhang Zongchang. He became the most, I'd say, probably the strongest of the warlords. He was the warlord of Manchuria. He's known as the Tiger of Manchuria. So in the early 1920s, Zhang goes over. Okay, this is gonna be, there's two Zhangs. So Zhang Zongchang, he goes over to Zhang Zuolin's place because Zhang Zuolin's celebrating a birthday, 1922, and he gives him 2 empty baskets that what you would say a laborer would use over his shoulders.
Oh, okay. You know, like a carrying a backpack basket.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So Zhang Zuolin, he looks at this. He's a little baffled. So everyone's giving him all these riches and that. He's a big warlord. He could be the future leader of the whole country because he's fighting for it. And he's like this random dude who he hears is like a military commander. Gave him 2 empty baskets. It's like what the.
While everyone else is paying tribute.
And he doesn't show up to the place.
Yeah. I mean, right off the bat, all of this could sound very insulting.
Yeah. And he doesn't show up. So Zhang Zongchang, he doesn't physically go to the place. He just sends this, which is another weird thing because everyone's kissing the guy's ass, personally, right? And basically, Zhang Zuolin puts 2 and 2 together. It's symbolic. It's basically he will shoulder any responsibility that's thrown onto him. That's the image he wanted to give.
Okay, no, I wasn't guessing that. Like that was, I was getting the impression, okay, he's sending a proxy with the empty baskets. It's like, no, you don't deserve tribute.
Yeah, well, I could have gone 2 ways. So, what he was doing is he wanted to make a statement. He wanted to get noticed, I would say. And he does get noticed because it was, I would imagine, pretty insulting at the beginning. But it clued in. So Zhang Zongchang is then ushered into what we call the Fengtian clique. This is the one that Zhang Zuolin runs. So northeastern China is their territory. And they're fighting other cliques that are in central and southern China. I'm not going to go into the war, but it's a very complicated time. But Zhang's time in Siberia, I said he had been speaking with Russians, right?
Yeah.
Now, 1917, we're seeing the Russian Revolution. There's a civil war, the whites versus the reds. They lose, and the white army does eventually lose to the red army, and then they get scattered about. A lot of them, they run to Siberia. They have nowhere to go. So Zhang, he goes, hey, I got money. Come work for me. So suddenly, thousands of white Russian professional soldiers.
Yeah, I was going to say professional, and they've been fighting the Bolsheviks, the Mensheviks for a while now.
And specifically, they know how to use a new type of technology that no one in China knows about, armored train warfare. From World War I. They bring that, and Zhang Zongchang basically has a monopoly on armored train warfare for a little bit, and it makes him probably one of the strongest early day warlords.
Logistics wins wars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's actually some funny things going on. He gets some Cossack bodyguards, which is pretty awesome because those are the heavy units.
They're brutal. Russian Cossacks, like in
no mercy.
Historically, like
barbarians.
Their entire existence, like they are ruthless.
Yeah. Well, that they were always used by the Tsars as like the personal bodyguards because they'll kill anybody.
Well, in Napoleon's withdrawal from Russia, like he was hampered by the Cossacks, like just constantly, like imagine, I want to see a dog like biting you, like
that's their tactics.
as you're scurrying away,
because they're mounted.
It was just death by 1,000 cuts. They would hit and then just disappear.
They're mounted warriors. Their proficiency is using the saber and the lance.
Yeah, it was the yeah.
And they're malicious guys, and they weren't afraid. So we're talking in an era of gun warfare. They're one of the few guys who would ride and shoot at the same time. Yeah. Wild West kind of shit.
And they were great at surviving off the land.
The Siberian warriors, yeah. He also, he's the only one to do this in China at the time. He recruits white Russian women for his nurse regiments. And
it's
gonna get into
okay, so he just hired some white Russian women to be his nurses.
There is an element. There's
alright, Andrew Tate, alright.
Oh, you have no, it's gonna get good. Because this is all serious stuff, it's gonna get funny. He has an entire regiment of just white Russian nurses that teach all of his Chinese female nurses, and technically he probably had the best medical corps for years. Like, no one would have competed with it. So this guy had a random amount of all this under his thumb, and he's still an inferior to Zhang Zuolin, but he's obviously
number-wise, but he's catching up in tech-wise and modern military stratagems. Like,
Yep.
Yeah, that could be an edge.
And having the best medical corps is a huge boost in morale because men are going to be like, oh, we have a chance under you because you're going to be taken care of. And the combat capability was up the roof because of these White Russians. So just a few thousand of them, it did make a difference. He organizes the 65th Division. It's consisting of White Russian brigades. He's got about 3,000 White Russians at one point. It's really going to help him during... I don't want to go too much in the Warlord Era, but he fights during the Second Julie-Fengtian War, and this is kind of where he makes a name for himself. He charges over the Rukhe province, captures Liangzhou. He goes into Julie lines. So Julie is it's a place in China, but also it was the name of a clique, so there's a Julie clique. He basically goes into enemy territory and really fucks them up. He experiments with a small air force. He uses Cauldron 659 bombers. These are really old planes. Like, it was ineffective. I won't go into it. He really wanted an air force. He ends up paying a German guy to design like a special aircraft for him, and then when it shows up, it doesn't fly. And he
hired the wrong guy because German aircraft, World War One. Jeez,
And yeah, I mean, but this was like at the cusp, like in the very early 1920s, everybody suddenly was like, air warfare is going to control the world.
Eventually, yeah.
And he was obsessed like everybody else. During this Second Julie-Fengtian War, his forces, they captured the Longqiangang Pass, and he occupies Yuzhou, he occupies Shanghai. We're going to get back to that because it's important. But he helps seize Nanjing. That's the second capital of China, or we'll call it the southern capital of China. Very important place.
Nanjing, not Nanking?
It changes names, depending.
Oh, okay.
The way I am not fluent in this ancient history, but the names for capital cities change based off of how the situation is. If an enemy population controls Beijing, it becomes Peking, for example, or Biping is the outside of Beijing, actually. Never mind. But there's Tianjin, which is Tianjin sometimes. There's Nanking or Nanjing. When Nanjing is the real capital of China, it's called Nanjing. When it's not, it's Nanking. I could be wrong. That's just from all my readings. I am not an expert on Chinese history in
That's
general.
very interesting because I didn't know any of that.
But
cool.
every single city is like this. So if you have a capital of all their provinces, they all change all the time. It gets really confusing. And after he helps take Nanjing, that's like probably the biggest moment of his career. He's rewarded with the military governorship over Shandong province. And this is where the dark history of Zhang Zongchang really comes out. So,
let the cowboy loose.
Before that, I wanted to go into this. This is kind of funny. So, I said he helped take down Shanghai. Now, historically, Shanghai is kind of where the black market is in China. And Zhang Zolin has a really famous son called Zhang Shuliang, who became a junkie, an opium junkie. I don't know when his opium problem started, but I know that Zhang Zongchang took Zhang Shuliang around Shanghai, and they would just get fucked up on opium together because they were both like, into that, cigars, womanizing, and all that. But
the opium dens, as they were called,
yes.
That's your pleasure houses as well. It's that those are your clubs at the time.
Yeah, and you got to imagine.
And Andrew Tate loves his clubs.
I haven't mentioned what Zhang Zongchang looks like, because it might be surprising. He's 6'7". He's a tree of a guy, built like he's a bull of a guy.
Considering, like, at the time, the average height is probably like 5'6", 5'8".
Yeah. Zhang Shuliang, for example, I've seen film footage of him quite on the smaller, more delicate side. So he would be looking up to this guy in general. If they were going around town having fun, you want to be with Zhang Zongchang because he'll kill someone.
Probably, he's got a very imposing physique.
Oh yeah, he was a thuggish guy. I mean, he'd been a bouncer.
You can spot him on the street for sure.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, he was very noticeable on the street.
I'm getting the idea that when this guy enters a room, like he captures the attention of everyone.
I almost want to kind of compare him a little bit to Kingpin from Marvel.
Okay,
a little bit, but I mean, he's not head honcho or anything. He always is under somebody else. He's never his own man in a lot of ways, but the way that he runs things, he's a criminal mastermind basically. But Shanghai, it's the black market, and he immediately starts networking with like the drug lords. human trafficking, like prostitution, all that. Like he is getting in bed with
racketeering, gambling,
everything.
That sort of stuff.
Because he's a criminal. He's a long-time criminal. And he brushes shoulders. He speaks their language. He knows exactly what he's doing. And he makes a lot of friends at this point. Now, he becomes the military governor of Shandong. This is where he becomes what I would say, this is the part where people don't know. Because anyone who talks about this guy, it's always the memes. We're going to talk about the funny nicknames and his lifestyle. But in reality, he was a monster. So, basically, he fleeces the population, which is something you've seen in Chinese history. There's always a military governor of God knows what province, and they'll overtax, they'll embezzle, they'll do terrible things, and they'll hurt the population. He does everything humanly possible that hurts the population, and he does it just because he's hoarding money for himself. And there's no way around it. So he mismanages. It's legendary how bad he mismanages his province. So, like, to go into it,
he's a thug running, a province.
He is a gangster. And, just to show how much of a gangster he is, one of his favorite hobbies, in English it would translate to splitting melons. This is the practice of...
yes. You want to come over later? We're going to split some melons.
It sounds kind of like a monster thing. This is the practice of bashing in...
No, I was just... Oh, okay. It actually means something else. I was just...
Oh, I mean something.
I was actually thinking it literally is a hobby of... like cutting melons open, like I don't know. He has an obsession with fruit or something. He likes cooking on his spare time.
Oh yeah, he was a proficient cook.
Well, if you told me like, hey, you want to come over tomorrow and we're gonna
split some melons.
We're gonna split some honeydews and some cantaloupe and I don't know, make a fruit platter. It's like okay, that sounds fun.
A grapefruit me or something.
Okay, so what is splitting melons?
It's busting people's heads in with a rifle butt. That's specifically what it is. Another thing that he liked to do...
A fun pastime, I suppose.
Anybody that messed with him or his crews, that was his go-to. Another thing he liked to do to scare the populace, he found telephone poles funny to look at. Because, he's from a rural village, by the way.
Yeah.
And so he hung people from them. He just, for some reason, this made him laugh. So he did that to scare people. Yeah. Severed heads, too, on the telephone poles. Like that. Well, I mean, that was... In Shandong province, you're going to see that, to be honest. He reigned over Shandong for 3 years, and the people... It was some of the darkest times of Shandong, and Shandong has had some dark times. He was as corrupt as any corrupt official could be. He fleeced the population, like I said. So what he did is, he made up taxes to just continuously tax people, and then he stole all fundings from any institution there could be. So let's just say, the education system, it collapsed immediately, a year in, because he just took all the money away from them. And their economy, it completely went stagnant because basically, as he stole all this money, he just printed money, as we might, as Canadians, know something about today. And, he just printed money as fast as he could, so it became useless. The currency was garbage.
Inflation, yeah. I mean, Zimbabwe.
That's a good example.
Yeah. It's like, oh, okay, their dollar was dropping, and it's like, oh, okay, but if we print more money, then we have more money. It's like, that's not really how economics work. It's like, yeah, you have more paper currency, but the value is changing because, your paper currency always has to, is it on the gold standard or something? It's the value of something. Having more of it doesn't diminish, or yeah, don't ask me to explain basic economics.
For the audience that's curious, if anyone, I don't know if it's rare to find people who are economic historians or something. China got off the gold standard like other countries after World War I because of financial problems. And Shandong had its own, I'm going to call it monopoly money. So they had a currency that was only accepted in his province, and it was useless. And he doesn't personally use his own currency. I'll get into that. But basically, you have to imagine Weimar Republic. The Weimar Republic. Yeah. It is that situation. Wheelbarrows of money to buy, bread. It's bad. Anybody that criticized Zhang Zongchang or the Fengtian governance, because he's still part of this clique, you're imprisoned and, splitting melons, basically. If you were a newspaper and you criticized the regime, he had this policy of just making sure every editor was shot. So any slight bit of criticism, you get just your editors are dead. Pretty hardcore. Things, got bad for the people. Things got so bad for the commoner, like the peasant in Shandong, they formed a militia group called the Red Spear Militia. It was very famous because they had these red tasseled spears. Not so good at fighting thugs with guns. They couldn't really defeat Zhang Zongchang's, army of criminals. So, they were pretty outgunned, and there was a real desperate struggle by the common peasants to overcome this guy and to get him out of the province. It didn't work out. He would not be taken down by the peasants, I'll say that much.
And he doesn't have to answer to any oversight from, main China or anything like that.
His boss, who's Zhang Zongchang, is in Manchuria, so God, I'm doing things with my hands. So Shandong is here, Manchuria is about here. They're close, but even if the guy wanted him to do something, there's real no oversight at all, and nothing. And just to talk about his taxes, I had to look this up. So he put taxes on every independent item he could: rice, tobacco. He tried to tax firewood, which is a weird one. Dogs, rickshaws, livestock. He taxed brothels, military pensions, opium pipe lighters is an interesting one. He had a big tax on that. So if it could be taxed, he taxed it. And apparently he forcefully collected donations from the entire public to build a shrine for them. And the shrine was a bronze statue of himself.
Nice. So like all these taxes, like obviously it's not going back into the community. No. It's going into his own personal fund.
So the way the warlords worked is you had to fund your military. So you took the money that you could acquire and you would spend it, either the British, the French, the Japanese, the Germans, whoever could bring over arms, they would arm your army. Like if you know what the Mauser gun is, that was a huge thing for the warlords. They loved this gun, so the Germans exported a shit ton of Mausers, for example.
Probably a lot of like old Martini Henrys at this point well, because like the British had phased out the Martini Henry for the Enfield, and so a lot of nations
secondhand, all secondhand guns and secondhand planes. World War I planes from France and Italy were going like hot cakes. A lot of those, especially Italian.
You see it later, like in modern day, how less developed nations, they will purchase the bigger nations' former tech, picking up their old T-54s and T-34s.
We see it
tanks
today.
And we see it today. And so at that time, picking up the Mausers, Martini Henrys, actually the Mauser would be more advanced weaponry than the Martini.
What they liked is, that the Mauser could go like semi-automatic, so you could like unload a whole clip out of the little pistol. So basically,
there was different attachments you can put on the Mauser to make it like a
fantastic,
like a ranged, almost like a mini rifle.
Yeah. There was a buttstock you could buy.
Buttstock, and you put a scope on it, extended barrel.
In Resident
Evil, very handy pistol.
Resident Evil 4, by the way, there's a mock-up of it, and you can buy the buttstop of it. It's one of my favorite guns.
Fun fact, it's also the inspiration for Han Solo's gun.
Oh yeah, I can see the look. The reason why the Warlords loved it is because any single guy, if you gave them the extended clip in this gun, they could spray and they're gonna kill somebody. Because it's like literally 25 bullets just going in a big, you're gonna hit somebody. So they love that. Because even if you give a peasant a rifle, doesn't mean the peasants can be able to actually shoot people off of it. It's not as easy as it sounds.
Last Samurai has a good scene in it showing, basically the peasantry being introduced to rifles, and it does require training to use properly. Like that one scene where he's trying to say, the Japanese army is not ready to move out against what's his name again?
Well, Ken Watanabe's character's made up in it. It's not real theater.
Just the characters. To go up against the samurais, they're not ready, and he would stand and he's like forcing the guy at gunpoint to shoot him, or he's going to shoot him, and he misses like four times in a row. And that would be very accurate.
As a 19th century modern rifle group does, they go into a dense forest to fight a melee army. It's like, why would you choose that ground to fight them? Of course the samurai are going to win there.
It was one of the edges of the British army for so long. The redcoats, and why the redcoats were so feared is because they were trained so extensively in
they're
using
different.
the muskets and in discipline. And when you're in a major battle with another with an opposing force, discipline is what wins in those kind of engagements. Okay, like you got one side that they'll fire precisely and without missing, without panicking. And then the other side, as the bullets start flying, they're panicking, they're missing their shots, and of course one is going to be more effective than the other. And that's, you see that here too. Like peasantry with guns doesn't necessarily mean okay, they equal chance.
Damn right. Back to Mr. Zhang Zongchang. So on top of these taxes and the statue he made for himself, he just simply took money from banks. He took money from the troops' wages, not the officers close to him, mind you, just the grunts. So he was fleecing his grunts, which sounds horrible. It's horrible, of course. This is a pretty common thing back then in China, mind you. And he was paying his regular grunt soldiers with the currency of the province, which is worthless. But for his officers, he paid them in silver dollars, Mexican silver dollars, which was the real currency in China.
I was going to say, silver dollars, coins always have value because end of the day, it is still an iron ore. You can always melt it down and that can be sold itself.
And he became the personal benefactor for the drug lords, the arms dealers, honestly, the entire entertainment field. So you got your actors, prostitutes, everything. He was the guy, this was his chocolate factory. He was the one putting money there.
His oyster.
I'm sure you've heard this name, General Vinegar Joseph Stilwell from the Pacific War. He was the American attaché in China. He worked with Chiang Kai-shek.
Okay.
Notorious hardline asshole. Anyways, he randomly visited Shandong during this time, and he said, because he was a military attaché.
Doesn't Stilwell become? The name is ringing a bell.
He serves in the Burma War mostly, but he had a career of World War One, interwars period. He became important at West Point as a trainer. But he was called Vinegar because he was a really anal guy and stuff. But he's famous because he was the attaché who was supposed to be working with Chiang Kai-shek to represent America, but he had such a bad relationship with Chiang Kai-shek. It actually caused a lot of problems. Regardless, he is an attaché at this time, and he visits Shandong, and he says that he sees dead people in the streets, littering, just starved dead children everywhere, and he's seeing kids eating crushed worms and all sorts of terrible stuff. There's
Delicious.
Abandoned children walking around, and apparently the troops that he sees are tearing down houses for firewood. So from his viewpoint, it's pretty bad.
Yeah, that sounds pretty bad.
I found it funny as a primary source. It's someone I talk about all the time in the Pacific War podcast I do, because I love Stilwell's a hilarious character. So Shandong is completely devastated, but for Zhang Zongchang, I mean, he's at the capital, Jinyang. This is the eastern part of Shandong, and he's living it up. He's having a great time. His HQ is described as a medieval court. It's full of extravagant entertainment. It's got famous musicians. He's got shows always going on. Think almost New York style. He puts a lot of money to entertain himself. He has elaborate feasts. He loves French champagne. It's one of his favorite things to drink. And he likes Scotch. And his favorite type of cigars are Cuban. It's a man of fine taste.
I was just gonna say that's 3 for 3.
Yeah. Churchill would have probably had fun with him. Churchill would have said he was a goddamn hooligan, but probably would have had fun with him.
Well, just because somebody smokes cigars doesn't necessarily mean Churchill would like them.
And drinks. 2 for 2 on that. I don't know, but so
yeah, but Churchill was pretty stignant about what those kind of people are doing to their own people.
He's a 19th century gentleman. Yeah, of course, I'm making it a joke, but so he's entertaining. He's got writers, entertainers, drug pins. He likes Western journalists because he loves promoting himself. This is a big thing about him.
Okay.
He loves to play poker. with other warlords, but they only play with silver dollars. And apparently, he loved losing like $50,000 a night. Like this guy lost a lot of money.
Well, I mean, he's got the taxes to replace it.
Exactly. So he's a gambler on top of it. You probably won't know this name, but Wellington Koo was a very famous politician in China. He went to the Paris Peace Conference to represent China for the Treaty of Versailles. So I want to call him like a very famous ideological figure for modern Chinese history. He would be somewhat known to Chinese people. He had a wife who was a famous socialite. She got around.
How did he come across the first name Wellington?
Oh, he probably chose it from
the
Duke Wellington. I would imagine he just liked the name. His wife was like this socialite. She went to all the big parties, and she was a regular visitor of Zhang Zongchang. And I find that interesting, and I'm just speculating she might have gone there for more than just the booze. There might have been something going on there. But this is hearsay from me. I don't know. I don't know nothing. But she had this to say about Zhang Zongchang. I have a quote here. Zhang Zongchang was so delightfully outrageous, he was disarming. There were many stories about him. He was called Old 86. Something about his height being of the pile of $86 or something. A figure I think represented the length of a certain portion of his anatomy that might not have been his height though. When I visited him with Pao Pei and Chow Chow, these are two dogs, who would come with me, Zhang would scream and roar at his servants, "Never mind what you give Madame Ku to eat, but make sure that her dogs get the very best or you'll suffer for it." I like this quote because when we talk about his nicknames, this is a bit of an oddity. It seems like he's a dog lover. And there's a lot of weird stuff about his relationship with dogs. And saying that, if you're talking about Zhang Zongchang, you're talking about the Dogmeat General. This guy is a man of multiple nicknames. If you go on Wikipedia, they list about 20. And you'd probably be asking yourself, okay, why the hell is he called Dogmeat General?
I mean, my first guess was like, oh, okay, like somewhere down the line he starts feeding people dogs. But I mean, that was
actually, I haven't heard that one. That's a good one.
Some would consider dog meat was actually more of a luxury at the time than
different parts of China.
Also, we're different, different cultures. So it's like, I mean, for us, like it's not that we look down on eating dogs. It's just we don't understand it.
In certain parts of China, they consume dog meat. It's more famous in Korea, to be honest. Yeah. But definitely
a lot of Southeast Asia, they're still eating dogs, and it's like, it makes sense. There's dogs everywhere.
I mean, we probably never talk about this, but we live in Quebec and we eat horse. Apparently, that's taboo in North America. You're not supposed to eat horse.
Mostly North America, horse is taboo, but in Europe, horse is eaten more frequently than
beef.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was in Germany, they had me cook a steak because they're like, we don't eat this. This is not something you consume. Like, so yeah,
and it's also because like it's considered more of a luxury in Europe because they don't have like boundless pastures like here in North America. Like Canada's a pretty large nation, and we got all the space and
Well, we have a good cattle industry.
Yeah, but because we have the space for it, but cattle industry takes up a lot of space. Yeah. Like you need those open grazing grounds and that.
Because I mean, in Germany, it's pork. They're all about.
Well, that's also one of Quebec's number one industry. We were number one in pork in the world for a very long time.
Yeah, no, steak's definitely rare there. But his nickname, Dogmeat General, there has been multiple theories as to why he was called this. And there's some that people actually wouldn't know about, and I'll get into it, because Wikipedia does a good job of listing the more well-known ones, but there is a story I have from his childhood. The number one reason why he's called Dogmeat General is apparently because he loved a domino game called Pai Jie, which means dog meat, Pai Jie. Others think it was because his favorite brand of tonic, which also was Pai Jie, it meant dog meat. There was a rumor that every single day of his life he ate a meal of black chow chow because he believed it boosted a man's vitality. And I don't think it's true because I think it has to do with his reputation for something else.
So it's like Blue Chew?
This is like Blue Chew. This episode is brought to you by Blue Chew for sure. Well, we're gonna get into his penis. But like I said, that quote with Madame Wellington Koo, he seemed to be a dog lover. I don't know. I think that lays it out there. I don't even have this.
That, or she's a mistress of his, and keep the mistress happy.
I have a dark story. It's not even in my notes, but I read 3 books about people who tried to make up stories about him, salacious stories, by the way. And I don't believe some of them, because some of them, like, he was attacked by a lot of people because they saw him as he was a villain, but they actually made him to look like Satan. And there was a story that when he was a child in an impoverished village, that he used to be attacked almost daily by dogs, and that he would literally have to bash their skulls in to survive. And that's why
it could be traumatizing.
That's why he would be called Dogmeat.
Okay, but I mean, at this point, it sounds like he's being nice to dogs.
That's why
somebody who's traumatized a childhood by dogs usually doesn't have that approach.
And usually is afraid of dogs.
Yeah.
Usually is afraid of dogs.
And
yeah.
Like strongly hate them.
I mean, I know people that got attacked as a kid by dogs. They'll for their life.
Our buddy Jason, he was attacked by it was probably a small dog or something. Like, honestly, because he would always go on about this. Like he hates dogs because he was attacked by dogs when he was a kid. It's like probably a little like Shih Tzu or something.
He has a Shih Tzu.
Probably just like wanted to say hello or whatever. It traumatized him, and he disliked dogs for the rest of his life. Like they scared him. Like my dogs, like they're a little where like Maya was
well, you grow up with dogs or you don't. Like people who don't
we both always had dogs when we were growing up.
And it's like my wife did not grow up with dogs. So when a dog comes over to her, they have like that flinch. They don't want to go petted right away.
And us, we're like full on embrace. Like, okay, we're best buddies now. Like I know, like, I meet my buddy's dogs for the first time. The dog comes in and, like, I get a little too friendly. I become a dog with the dog. It's like, okay, we're playing now.
That's it. You're either a dog person or you're not. Mm-hmm. And I think that Zhang Zongchang was a dog person. It doesn't make... These quotes don't make sense. Yeah. And Madame Wellington Koo, to go on the record to even say that she met with this guy, because his reputation... We're going to get into it. It's interesting. And let's jump into it. So, of his nicknames, because he's going to have a lot of them, the people of the Shandong province would probably just call him Monster, rightfully so. But he was also known, and I can't wait for your opinion on this, here's some of his nicknames. The Lanky General, or the General with 3 long legs.
Okay, so lanky, he's tall. Okay, but I was like, in my head, I was thinking like he's a little bit more built, but lanky.
He's actually tall. Chubby. He's a thick boy. He's a thick boy.
Because lanky is tall and skinny, like really.
Oh, he's not skinny.
Like a walking spider.
He was a bipedal spider. He's a big bull guy.
But the 3 legs.
So his other nickname, which I had mentioned with Madame Wellington Koo, was Old 86. Do you know what that referred to?
I'm guessing like 86. I was going to say millimeters, but it's small.
So it referred to 86 Mexican silver dollars when stacked up, apparently was the measurement of his dick. And he was the one that would spread this nickname, by the way. He loved to say this. He was also described as 72 Canon Zhang. Again, that was another measurement he gave for his dick. And so he was 6'7". People described him, I have a quote here, he had the physique of an elephant, the brain of a pig, and the temperament of a tiger. It's an interesting description. He was also, this is one of my favorite nicknames. This is a nickname that he was aware of that people said about him, and he endorsed it. The General of 3 I don't knows. He did not know how many women he had, he did not know how many troops he had, and he didn't know how much money he had.
Psst. Hey you ever hear me talk about some great Pacific War movie or documentary like Pearl Harbor Minute by Minute over on Netflix and feel the urge to watch it for yourself? Uh-oh, you live in Japan, and your Netflix doesn't have it? Must suck to be you.
Sucks to be me right now.
Oh wow, Season 4 of Demon Slayer is out. Oh wait, I can't watch it on Canadian Netflix, but it's over on Japan Netflix? Whatever will I do?
Oh, no.
Being blocked from regional content? With private internet access, you too can watch Demon Slayer Season 4 by switching your IP address to Japan.
Yes! Hell yeah!
Why stop with Japan? With private internet access, you can change your IP address to over 84 different countries and every single US state, giving you access to region-restricted content all over the world.
Nice.
Many websites and services like Netflix are only accessible depending on your physical location, but private internet access helps you overcome these restrictions. Think about it. Without private internet access, it's like paying for a TV series and missing out on the latest season. Shots fired, Demon Slayer on Canadian Netflix.
Is that like a personal attack or something?
Ever fear people are gonna find your Google searches?
Banzai! Banzai! Banzai!
FBI, open up!
Private internet access makes sure that those Google searches remain a buried secret, as private internet access encrypts your internet access and has a no logs policy. Think you're safe with the local coffee shop's free Wi-Fi? No, you are certainly not. Private internet access gives you more privacy features than any other software, and real-time protection from malware and trackers, giving you peace of mind knowing those Google searches remain seen by you and you alone. Private internet access has a no-log policy that they've defended in court, which means they are not storing any of your browsing data. Hey, are you like me using different devices under one household? Private internet access is available on all platforms and protects an unlimited amount of devices at the same time. I personally use private internet access to unblock movies and TV series from all across the globe, and I sleep easier writing scripts for my YouTube channel and others knowing my data is secure. Look, this is a no-brainer. Sign up with my link in the description of this video to get 83% off, plus 4 months for free, so it ends up being only around $2 per month. Signing up for private internet access is risk-free. There's a 30-day money-back guarantee, and 24/7 customer support is available. So don't forget to click www.piavpn.com/The Pacific War Channel, and a big thanks to Private Internet Access for sponsoring this video.
At any given time.
Abundant, all three.
We're gonna get into it. He probably just didn't know. He was not
probably
the
not. No,
smartest.
he had enough that he didn't need to care.
One nickname that he himself would try to popularize was the Great General of Justice and Might.
Our hero.
I don't know if you've seen My Hero Academia. I always picture All Might.
Yeah.
Don't worry, everybody. I'm here. Now, he used to spread stories about the size of his penis. I am not being salacious. It was his favorite thing to do. He went out in public and continuously told people about how big his dick was.
Fucking Andrew Tate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was legendary from his youth, when he didn't have money, to when he does have money, to having a ton of concubines. He had a plethora of concubines. The exact number of concubines has been reported to be as high as 50, if not in the low figures 30. Historians have a hard time fixing the numbers, as Zhang Zongchang allegedly did not know himself how many there were. Allegedly, his concubines were from 26 different nationalities, and he gave each a wash bowl marked with the flag of her nation because he couldn't remember where she was from. He also said he gave his concubines numbers because he couldn't remember their names nor speak the various languages that they spoke, which is special.
I mean, he's...
By the way, he was a prolific
That's
polygamist.
a hero.
Oh yeah, he was a polygamist on top of it.
Obviously, at this point.
He had multiple wives. He was known to have wives that were Chinese, Japanese, Russian, Korean, Mongolian, and at least one was an American, and I found a picture of her. Pretty good looking.
Wow, that's
Don't know how she ended up there.
Yeah, I'm gonna say, yeah. Well,
So, good on her. She got the Zhang treatment. And again, Zhang was semi-literate. Okay, couldn't read very well. When people asked where he was educated, he told them the College of the Green Forest, which is a Chinese proverb for he was a bandit. So he just learned on the roads, as you would say. But despite being a semi-literate, Zhang Zongchang is famous for his poetry. And I'm so happy knowing Ian doesn't know about this, because this is going to be great. I would like to read to you his most famous poem. It's called...
I can't wait.
The title is Poem on Bastards. You tell me to do this, he tells me to do that. You're all bastards. Go fuck your mother. A poem by Zhang Zongchang.
Just beautiful. Just beautiful.
Yeah. For people who might not guess, during the Warlord Era, he was told by multiple warlords to join their side to fight. So this poem has some credence in his life. I have another poem, and it's untitled. And we have no way of knowing this is actually by him, by the way, because he was semi-literate. This poem has it as, they ask me how many women I have. To be honest, I don't know either. Yesterday, a boy called me dad. I don't know who his mother was. That's a poem.
That's a poem?
Yeah. And the last one I'll read is titled Praying for Rain.
Art is open to interpretation, right?
Damn right. So this is the last one I'll read. It's called Praying for Rain. The sky god is named Zhang. Why does he make life hard for me? If it doesn't rain in 3 days, I'll demolish your temple. Then I'll have cannons bombard your mom.
Yeah, go after the god's mom.
And there are people who state he did shoot cannons to try and make it rain.
Oh, I thought it was like, okay, if they have like priestesses at the table, at the temple, he was gonna have them all raped.
I mean, his mom was a witch. He was a superstitious person. Yeah. He would have believed things like, yeah, he would have. I'm gonna just so people, I don't want to hurt everyone's feelings. There's a lot of reason to believe Zhang Zongchang didn't write these poems. He had a lot of political enemies. There's actually another warlord who was called the Christian Warlord, who was like his rival because that was the goody two shoes guy. Whereas Zhang obviously presented himself as like this devilish figure. But this guy named Han Fuju, apparently he wrote a lot of like salacious stuff about him, and maybe this is the guy who actually wrote these poems to make fun of him. I want to believe that at least the poem about bastards is Zhang, because it's pretty on point. Zhang was a brutal tyrant by all means, but he did reward his officers very well. He paid them in silver while paying the rest of the guys, in shit currency that doesn't work. And Zhang Zongchang, he had a really funny habit. You know about ancient Sparta. One of the slogans of being a Spartan was, you're going to go to battle, so you're either coming back a victor or on your shield.
On your shield, yeah.
Zhang Zongchang had his own.
It was you better come back with your shield or on your shield.
Yeah, exactly. So Zhang Zongchang had a kind of a spin on this. He used to ride in a coffin on top of a car. So when he was doing parades, he would sit in a coffin smoking a cigar. And basically what he was saying to the public is he was willing to die. He's like, I'm going to go out there and win, or I'm coming back in a coffin. All right? One time, he failed in a campaign, and he intentionally paraded himself in the coffin to mock himself. So it's an interesting point about him. He kind of was a man of his word, I guess you could say. You probably heard of Chiang Kai-shek, the guy who ruled China. At some point during the Warlord Era, Chiang Kai-shek, he starts in Guangzhou in the south of China, and he basically starts defeating warlord one by one. And as he starts claiming from the south all these different territories, the other warlords, they freak out. And Zhang Zolin, he gets the remaining warlords together, including Zhang Zongchang, and they form this kind of like anti-Chiang Kai-shek coalition. They get wrecked anyways. Chiang Kai-shek, he ends up winning. It's called the Northern Expedition. And basically, Zhang Zongchang, his luck really runs out. He's in the face of it, so he's in control of Shandong province, and this is on the way to Manchuria, so he gets basically knocked out. Yeah. He doesn't die or anything. There's a lot of betrayals. Like, some forces betray him, he gets captured, he gets away.
But he's falling from his grace, His ivory tower has been toppled.
Yep. So, something that happens in this time period, we're getting to the early 30s, is basically Zhang Zongchang's boss, Zhang Zolin, his backers, his financial backers are Japan. So Japan is 100% funding and training his troops in Manchuria because Japan's sphere of influence is Manchuria. They want to retain it. And Zhang Zolin is their good boy. Until the late 1920s, he starts to backtalk them, and they don't like him anymore. They want to replace him. So they're looking at other figures, and Zhang Zongchang, he kind of he falls within their favor, and he gets them to keep funding him, and he is playing good with the Japanese. They like him. He's a useful, I'll call him a useful idiot. but it's not going to save his little fiefdom of Shandong. It's going to fall apart. He loses everything. What ends up happening, ironically, is the Japanese assassinate Zhang Zongchang. They have a puppet they want to install, and they think he'll be the new master Manchuria.
Okay.
Doesn't work out. Zhang Zongchang has a son, Zhang Zhiliang, we had mentioned, the other kid. He becomes the new leader of that warlord clique, and after his father was murdered by the Japanese, you can imagine he's not happy. He immediately joins Chiang Kai-shek. So this whole coalition that was under Zhang Zongchang to fight Chiang Kai-shek, his son's like, the Japanese are evil. I'm going to join Chiang. It unifies China, and everybody is more or less cool with this, but Zhang Zongchang. And this is where it's interesting. Zhang Zongchang, he fully rebels, and he single-handedly tries to fight everybody in China by himself.
Good luck.
He gets rocked, but I have to hand it to him. With the forces on hand that he did have, to just think that he could somehow like fight on his own, balls. This guy had big balls. He loses and he runs to Japan. He actually gets Miss Wellington Koo to get him a safe transport. He lives in Japan for a little while, and I love this part of the story.
I can't imagine the Japanese taking him very well, though.
They thought that he was somebody that they do try to like throw him back into Manchuria to try and rile up a rebellion.
Yeah,
They think like maybe he's a trump card to get back in, but it never really works. But while he's in Japan, a criminal is going to be a criminal, right? He accidentally kills a royalty member named Prince. Oh, this one's difficult to pronounce. Xin Kai. It's the cousin of the last emperor of China, Puyi. This is a weird story. So, Zhang Zongchang says it like this. He's at a hotel in Beipu. He's cleaning his gun while looking outside of his window. Prince Chiang Kai just happens to be strolling in the garden, and Zhang Zongchang says while he was cleaning his pistol, it accidentally shot and killed the prince. What we find out later is the prince was probably sleeping with one of his concubines. So we'll let the audience do the math there, because Zhang's gonna do what Zhang's gonna do. Zhang Zongchang, he's put on trial, he's found guilty, and he's given the choice of 15 days in prison or to pay $150 USD. That's a hell of a justice system.
$150 US at the time. I imagine that's like several thousand. But I mean, this guy is loaded, right?
Oh yeah, he would have been loaded with Japanese currency, by the way, because he would have took those silver dollars back to Japan. And trust me, silver. You can say what you want about gold. Silver is actually a great market to be in. Yeah, it's very stable.
In the Middle Ages, silver was
king.
Yeah, silver was the currency. Gold only came out later on because gold was so rare in Europe, but silver was abundant.
But so to go back, go future in history. So Japan invades Manchuria because their puppet never takes over, so they're screwed. In 1931, they are going to try and take over all of China. They think, some of them, but they send Zhang Zongchang over. And I guess they have some kind of deal with him. He's going to work with some other guys to try and get the Chinese to join the Japanese. Okay. He actually tries to talk to Zhang Zhiliang, who's working with Chiang Kai-shek at this time. And apparently, Zhang Zhiliang has a meeting with him, but this guy who hates Zhang Zongchang named Han Fuju, the guy who might have wrote these poems and slandered him, he is now the governor of Shandong province. So this guy who really hates him just got his old job. They all meet, and Zhang Zongchang, he beats Han Fuji. They have like a whatever conversation, and that's that. Now, we don't know exactly what happens, but it seems Han Fuji or somebody else had another man assassinate Zhang Zongchang at this point. So basically, they arranged for an assassination. They invite Zhang Zongchang to some kind of meal or something, and he ends up getting killed, shot. He's killed by a guy called Shi Yushan. It was at a banquet in Jinan in Shandong province. I'm going to assume it was this rival of his that set it up, but it could have been a number of people because
Doesn't sound like a very likable person. He probably made numerous enemies along the way.
Exactly. Anybody could have hit this.
I'm surprised he's lasted this long.
He was surprised. He used to tell people all the time that he thought he'd get shot any day. He was the guy who knew he was living on, death's door.
Yeah.
His last words apparently were "no good." So as he was dying. Zhang Zongchang's funeral was in.
I'm just thinking, sorry, the Shane Gillies funniest assassination. It would be Trump, because he would be like, the last thing he would say would be like, "Sit down, you're gay," and he's gonna make like a weird noise when he gets shot. Just
for sure.
Sorry, I had to go there.
To finish this off, Zhang Zongchang's funeral is in Xishan. It's attended by family, loyal friends. Apparently, he paid a shit ton of mourners to show up. And his tomb was rumored to have immense riches, as you would imagine. So a shit ton of people grave robbed him in the 1930s.
Did he insist on being buried with his concubines?
I
Or anything along those lines?
Yeah, probably. Well, the one thing I hear is that I think he treated women right. I don't know. Probably. I'm saying out of my ass, but there's a lot of The weird thing about him is you figure, oh, the guy's a lot of concubines. He's rich. Some of these women were sticking with him since he was young, when he was poor. That's a weird part of the story. He had women with him the whole time, so I don't know.
He had an American wife.
I guess that 86 nickname was true. Yeah. But that's the story of what you would call the basest warlord ever, or Basest General. Kind of the Andrew Tate of modern China.
I guess if he was like abrasive enough and just fucking Andrew Tate, I can't stand that.
I know.
It's just like the arrogant son of a bitch.
Yeah.
Just like like he's like Mark Wahlberg. Like if 9/11. If I was on that plane, it would go different.
9/11? No, would have gone down the same if I was on that plane.
Hashtag Marine Corps.
Hashtag
Hashtag
go U.S. Army. Yeah, I would have changed that whole thing.
Like Andrew Tate's like the same person. He's like, I train in hand-to-hand combat because if I see ISIS down the street, there's no terrorism around me because I'm Andrew Tate.
I mean, Andrew Tate is Muslim, by the way. I think anyway, that's a real nice story.
Well, because I remember reading.
He can fight. Like I've seen him do I've seen his kickboxing. He can still fight. He
I'm
is
sure.
a fighter.
Yeah, I'm sure. But
I wouldn't get in a ring with him.
He's like, I love to watch like murder videos and war, like graphic war footage, because I desensitize myself. Cause
He's just a charlatan.
Yeah.
We're living in a world of men who have been disenfranchised by society, and anybody can get in the game of just telling them, if you do X, Y, and Z, it'll improve your life.
But these are the secrets to success, and it's this easy, it's this simple.
I don't know that we're gonna get into this.
But
I'll say this: whatever Jordan Peterson says about Andrew Tate, Jordan Peterson is correct. He is not a good voice for men in the end. Like, I know people are gonna not like to hear that, but you can find better role models. I mean, for fuck's sakes, go look at Dwayne Johnson, Arnold Schwarzenegger, or something like.
There's a rags to riches story. Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Arnold, and despite what people are going to say about Arnold and the Maid or whatever, Arnold is still one of my great heroes.
No, he absolutely. He came to America with nothing, and he used what was available to him. Like, everyone thinks, he made majority of his money off of like movies and his weightlifting. But the little money that he was making when he came to the States, he invested into real estate right away. Mm-hmm. And that's where he got his first few millions, was real estate.
Who, of the top people you think are so in love with America, probably should be president? Like, Arnold Schwarzenegger is one of those guys where if he could run, my God, he could have brought the country together. Whatever. But that was this.
That's a whole conversation for another day.
This episode, went right off the rails with that. But again, to anybody,
it's hard to be passive when Andrew Tate is referenced. It's like,
oh no, he's an idiot. But for anybody who hasn't already checked it out, please do. My Patreon account at www.patreon.com/the Pacific War Channel. I do this thing with my voice whenever I do these fucking readouts.
You've done it so
often.
When you're doing your plug, it's like.
But I just want to say to the audience, a lot of guys, even like, you know, history YouTubers and that, they make these Patreons and they're just looking for money. They're just looking for support. They don't give you anything back. As for little as just $2, you get pretty much everything on my Patreon, and it's at least one exclusive podcast a month. I don't believe in not giving back, and honestly, if you join up, you get to be in the polls, you get to choose the next subject. A lot of the guys, when they do come up with something that they want me to write about, I immediately start on it. So my whole series on General Kanji Ishiwara was a guy who just brought it up. He wanted me to do a piece. Please feel free. You get a free trial, by the way. The first month is free, apparently. I had that unlocked. So yeah, it costs you nothing. You can just fleece me. Go download all my episodes and leave. Whatever.
Netflix.
Exactly.
It's just...
You can do that. And and you can always catch me over Kings and Generals for the Age of Conquest Fall and Rise of China podcast. That's my favorite one. I like writing. And the Pacific War Week by Week podcast, which, my God, man, we are passing 120 some episodes. It's insane. We're in early 1944 right now on that podcast.
Say you gotta be at 44.
Yeah. It's we just started Operation Ichigo, which is impossible to do in a podcast format. There's too many units attacking in too many provinces in China. It's insane. And of course, you know, this is the Pacific War channel. You go check out my YouTube for my videos, or you can, if you're listening to this on Spotify, check out my other episodes with people like Ian, where we talk about goofy stuff.
Hello.
And we won't be recording a podcast right after this one. No, we're going to be a bit drunk.
Yeah, we still didn't decide what the next one is, but I guess...
Well, I'm going to be experimenting, and maybe I will get canceled for what we're going to do in the next episode.
I'm going to try and do something a little funnier based, less serious, just more off the cuffs.
What I like to call it is, you got guys who aren't historians. Like, let's be honest. I'm going to say it in the episode when we record it. We are big fans of Shane Gillis. We're big fans of Come Down, if you guys know what that is. And when these guys riff and talk about history, they say it in a hilarious manner.
And it's the speakeasy format, which is like, you know, been playing around with, you know, for over nearly a decade at least.
Like when
older YouTube channels that you've had, you know, tried the speakeasy.
If you're at a bar with your friends, you know, you're gonna hear your friend tell like a terrible bad account of some history event or person, but it's funny.
Yeah.
You know, it's hilarious to hear what you can come up with, and that's what I want to do with him in the next podcast. We're gonna do almost like a satire. We're gonna tell like dumb stuff.
If you go to the bar with like friends like us, chances are we might have a few too many beers, and the entire conversation is just gonna gravitate around like history one way or another. Arguments will ensue. It's like, oh no, this would have happened. Well, did you know this or that? And it's just for the average person, it's like these are the most boring people. But to history, like history buffs and history lovers in general, it's just like you love talking about what you love, and we love history.
This has been the Pacific War Channel. Thank you for joining us, Ian.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Over and out.
Bye, guys.